have a bit of a follow-up question to Ezra's concern. So you were kind of talking about how the Milo Yiannopoulos, Nick Fuentes, Kanye kind of formed like the dark triad. You know, Nick Fuentes was recently on Tucker Carlson, and figures like him are growing in prominence, and other kind of advocates of, I guess, white nationalism or Christian nationalism, whatever you want to call it, that ideology is increasing. And as someone that is concerned about those kinds of views like spreading in prominence, if not deplatforming, how would you, I guess, what's your insight towards people that might be sympathetic to my view of how to sort of deal with that situation?
Yeah, so Saren, what's interesting actually, I'd met Nick before either of us were anything. I think I'd met him like when he was 17. He was like running around the high school speaking thing, and I was doing my thing. And what's interesting is after he started building his platform, he actually got debanked from every banking institution. He couldn't be on any streaming platform. YouTube kicked him off. Rumble kicked him off. He couldn't have a Spotify account. And he came back with a roar over the next 10 years. So you seeing him on Tucker is after he's officially mainstreamed himself, but he got kicked off of everything. The dude couldn't get a credit card. I'm not saying like whether you think you should have a credit card or not, it's not my point. My point is the man got deplatformed and canceled to the extreme. He didn't have an X account. He still doesn't actually have an X account, I think. So yeah, he got cut from everywhere. And it's not like Tucker picked him up out of obscurity and was like, come on my platform. It was actually after his Rumble stream became the most viewed Rumble stream independent of Tucker interviewing him, Dave Smith interviewing him, or any other speaker interviewing him. So I think ideas figure out a way, especially in such a fragmented environment, you can't keep them down.
I was going to kind of raise a question which is sort of similar to what Ezra talked about, which is this idea of like both Side-ism in deliberation and in dialogue, where if you have an idea that's maybe some would consider extreme, but you give it equal weight to maybe a more sort of centrist idea, that you're basically assigning an equal value to both sides, that could be harmful in terms of, some might argue, you know, I think that this idea is way more extreme, but you're putting it on the level playing field, so now they're seen as equivalent. And I'm wondering kind of how you view that and how you respond to that.
Gotta love this one mic situation. This is like the perfect simile for bridge builders. So your platform is only as big as one microphone. This is actually, I think, almost like Saren's question with 2.0, which is, you know, in a bridge dialogue, when you have two people, you are literally giving equal weight. My point and my question would be, what is the goal of success? Like, what are we trying to achieve in this conversation, right? I don't think in a bridge dialogue or in a conversation, we're trying to win a political battle. One of our norms is this is not about winning. It's to listen rather than to respond. The reality is when you walk into a BridgeUSA discussion, you are not going to shift the landscape on the rise of white nationalism. Now, someone may make the argument to me that, well, at scale, if you have, we for example, engage 40,000 students a year and growing. Our goal is to get to 800 chapters for the next 4 years, which is approximately 25% of all colleges in the United States. We're currently 120. We average about 200 to 300 people per chapter. You could say, well, if each one of them held a conversation that was extremely controversial and they platformed those ideas, maybe there's a spillover argument. But my point is those ideas have resonance whether or not we discuss it or not. So the reality is, like, can we actually build the human trust in civic bonds to prevent radicalization when they go online and they get fed a bunch of bullshit?
Nice to see you again.
Oh, it's the real Ezra. No, I'm kidding.
It's the other one. Yes. So my question kind of speaks to a lot of what we've been talking about radicalization and platforming. So some people have an argument that goes about, like, when someone is platformed that is very extreme and has extreme hateful views, like I'm thinking we're talking about Nick Fuentes and Tucker Carlson, I'm thinking anti-Semitism, racial hatred of different kinds, homophobia. Some argue that just having that out there is harmful and perpetuates those harmful ideologies. And I wanted to kind of pitch that to you as, is that still worth it, right? Does the value of speaking and deliberating and having different ideas outweigh any harm caused to those populations by kind of popularizing hateful ideologies?
Yeah, so it's a great question. The short answer to that question, there's a short answer and a long answer. the short sort of like dismissive answer to that question is that those ideas are going to be in the ether, whether or not they're discussed or not. But the second point there is that all of American politics doesn't boil down to gun control, abortion, and immigration. There's like 100 other equally consequential issues. Like no one talks about, I don't know, like campaign finance, gerrymandering. What have we talked about? Climate. What have we discussed? Disability rights. Like there's like literally 100 issues. And the reality is that we're all being exploited because our politicians want us to live in a reality where it's 3 issues so that they can spend every 2 years coming to your community pretending that they're going to actually solve their issues, but then only campaign on those 3. And then we sort of feed into the outrage industrial complex. The longer response, we can talk about a little bit in the workshops because I want to get to other questions. But I'll just share that young people, like when we started Ezra in 2018, 2019, students would come up to us and they would say, you're actively divesting from the resistance against President Trump. Or on the right, they would say, you're actively divesting from the resistance against the left. And I'm like, that is the outrage industrial complex in a nutshell. Like, people want you to be pissed off. Because if you're a leader and I want your vote, and I don't actually have to sell you a vision, I just have to convince you that Ezra is evil, that is a much easier task. Not saying, Ezra personally, but like it's a much easier task to attack what Ezra looks like, who he is, without actually ever having real substantive engagement. So it's important to like be emotional and be outraged and be challenged. You can make many arguments that Manu, you occupy a certain level of privilege and it's below or above my privilege. But my point is all of us are just being played. We're all being played.